Hello and good time of day to all of you, my chess friends here on the Internet Chess Club. This is Grandmaster Alex Yermolinsky. Welcome back. Welcome back to Whatever Russian Schoolboy Knows live. My regular bi-weekly show. Hello and good time of day to all of you, my chess friends here on the Internet Chess Club. This is Alright, little bit of an echo over there, but I think I got it fixed. So, gather around and questions, answers, please be active. Don't hesitate. Interrupt me at any time. By typing your questions, I'll be happy to answer them. So the talk today is Magnus's domination in the two Grand Chess Tour events, both combination of Rapid and Blitz. Alright, so let's look at the standings after those two events. They went one after another, 2 consecutive weekends, and altogether it was a grueling, tough stretch for the players. And they ended up playing 54 games in the span of, I believe, 12 days. Yeah, that's incredible. The standings reflected right here, as you can see, that Magnus captured 23 points in the Grand Chess Tour overall count, by winning, finishing second in the first event in Paris, and winning outright the second event in Leuven, Belgium. 23 points. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I may be a little bit wrong with the rules and regulations for the for Grand Chess Tour this year, but it seems to me that altogether is going to be 4 events. So they just had 2, and then going to be 2 classical tournaments, classical time control, in St. Louis, the Sinquefield Cup, and London Classic, obviously in London, England, in December. Magnus, so far, is not listed in any of the remaining events. It is clear that he has a bigger fish to fry by competing in the World Championship match against a surprising but nonetheless dangerous challenger in Russian Sergei Karyakin. Alright, so Magnus's preparation for the match wishes to take place in New York City in November. Sinquefield Cup does not figure. Alright, so Magnus appears next in Bilbao. That's going to be a grand event. 6 players, including Karyakin, so they're going to see each other and meet each other face to face at the chessboard. Then he wants to play Chess Olympiad and then the World Championship match. Depending on how the match goes, he may or may not take part in the last Grand Chess Tour event in London. Now, so far the organizers of the London tournament did not announce their wild card. So 9 players are there, and you see them positioned their places 2nd through 10th, and Magnus may just be willing to compete in the final stage. If he does, then he's in a great position to capture the overall prize, because if I'm not mistaken, once again I'm using this qualifier, if I'm not mistaken, then only 3 events, your best events, going to be taken into account, and you can drop one of them, your worst one, or choose not to participate, as Anand chose not to play in Paris. And Magnus chooses not to play in St. Louis. But altogether, if he captures some points, which I'm sure he will, from London, it's going to be real tough to catch up with him. Nakamura, on the other hand, alright. No, he will drop out the Belgium event and he'll be with 13 points plus whatever he gains from St. Louis and London. Contention, obviously. Wesley Saw in a worse situation because he had 10 points from Belgium and 7 points from France. But anyway, we'll get to this. Now, points-wise, the margin of victory for Magnus. No, clearly we're talking about the Leuven event because, no, in Paris he didn't win. Nakamura won. Hikaru played overall very strong in Paris, and if it wasn't for, no, guess what? A couple of unfortunate turnarounds in his personal encounters with Magnus Carlsen, his margin of victory probably would be even more comfortable. But as it was still enough to finish comfortably ahead of Magnus Carlsen. Even in the last game they played in the last round of the Blitz event did not matter. Magnus won it, but it did not matter. Nakamura won, captured the stage. Now, about Magnus, since we're talking about Magnus, he honestly had a spotty event. Not everything was roses for Magnus. He had some difficulties, particularly, I would say, in the last day of Blitz in Paris. So that happened over previous weekend, so I believe it was, the 12th? Yeah, it was on the 12th this month. They started on the 9th. And he also didn't play particularly well on the first day of the Rapid. So first goes Rapid and Blitz. Just 4 days later, on the 17th in Leuven, Belgium. Some of these games left strange impression. Actually, there wasn't a whole lot of blunders on Magnus's part. I think he more or less kept things under control, and he resisted and posed tactical problems. And thanks to that, for example, in that Blitz, the second day of the Blitz in Paris, he was able to win a couple of games that simply looked lost on the position that was against Wesley So and Hikaru Nakamura. Yet he lost 4 games out of 9. 4 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw. That's very un-Magnus-like. Of course, we understand that. But the strength of Magnus is that he wins when it counts. Let's look back last year. This whole Grand Chess Tour was difficult for Magnus. He totally crashed and burned from the inaugural event over there, the first tournament, Norway Chess. Actually finished close to last place. You remember the terrible losing on time against Topalov in the winning position, and it got worse from there. And bad tournament, total waste. Yet he played reasonably well in St. Louis and finished excellently in London. And by the way, Magnus knows how to bide his time. So he doesn't grow overconfident. He bides his time and finds the right moment when to push, when he feels that the opponents are tired or, otherwise, not able to show their best. That's what he did in London last year in December, where he started tournament with 5 draws and seemed totally out of contention. But in a situation when there is no clear front runner, when people sort of take points away from one another and beat each other up, Magnus usually takes advantage of this. And that's exactly what happened in the Leuven, where he came to the last day. So obviously, he did great in the second day of the Rapid, when he won all 4 games. That was just amazing comeback, right? Won the Rapid stage, but still it was kind of not sealed, and he didn't manage to increase his lead in the first day of the Blitz in Leuven. But comes the second day, and that's where Magnus shined big time. What particularly amazed me and pleased me, but surprised me as well, was Magnus's steady, reliable positional play. That's what he used in critical games, and happens to be that stretch. So there was round 12. So they played 2 games, 9 games in the first day. So they begin with round 10, round 11. So rounds 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the last day of the Leuven Blitz. That's where Magnus was totally at his best, and I'm going to show you, hopefully, all the 4 games, at least fragments. And you'll see how it went. So attention to the board. So white is Anand, black is Carlsen. Well, looking at this situation. Let me open my analysis. I'm right here. Now, Magnus, I don't know. Well, he almost always answers e4 with e5. Oh, good to have you here, Jacob. So Magnus almost always answers e4 with e5. Well, but at least when the situation is kind of unclear in the tournament, and no, he believes that he can equalize first and then outplay his opponents. He does have Sicilian in his possession, an opening repertoire, the neither he can play it, and he used it in Blitz some of the games, but mostly he's an e4, e5 player. And often when he plays e4, he gets the same pawn structure. So it's almost like Magnus playing against himself. And amazingly, he's so comfortable on either side of the structures that I think it impacts their opponent's decision making. For example, in this position after 15 moves of play, I think Anand had no reasons to complain about this position. Well, he sits there in a normal situation. And, no, it was the Italian game or Roy Lopez, I don't even remember. But point is, it's a known structure, and White managed to play d4 before the opponent could play d5. So he put some pressure on e5, but all the same, it doesn't mean that he's accomplishing a whole lot, because Magnus's knight on g6 obviously supports e5 and shores up the king side. One would expect in such situation Anand to be able to keep the pressure for a long time, because Black's problem is that he doesn't want to take on d4 unless he wins the pawn on e4. And the move h3 was a typical move for the structures, be it Roy Lopez or Italian, just taking away the g4 square would be expected. One thing I notice here, that the inclusion of the moves a4, a5, which is sort of a new thing for these positions, may work in White's favor. For example, in this situation, he takes with the queen, preserving his pawn in the center. And if Black plays c5, he makes such horrible weakening of the d5 and b5 squares that even if it worked tactically, capture on e4 would probably be quite suspect. For example, if White just played knight d5, you could probably give White some edge here, right? You must take, and then this, and okay, bad pawn on d6, e4 safely protected. White can also go back with the queen, and if you grab that one, then you lose a piece for sure. So one would expect h3, and one wonders, like this, why it wasn't played. Well, I can offer a few explanations to this, or rather, not separate explanations, or rather combination of factors. First off, Anand, of course, is the oldest player of this whole thing, and while he skipped the Paris event, he was busy playing in Lyon, where he defeated, and that was a rapid tournament. In the finals, he was able to defeat the player, I think 31 years his junior, the Chinese rising star Wei. In itself, it's a great accomplishment, to find a parallel accomplishment, probably think Viktor Korchnoi. Yet, Anand kind of looked a bit tired. He was trying to play his smart chess, not overextending, and no, he played great event altogether. I think, I was very pleased to see him playing well. A little bit faded away toward the end of the Blitz marathon. They played each other twice altogether, 18 games. And this is the moment where Anand, I think, simply didn't have the strength to maintain tension, and he wanted clarity at all costs. Now, that's where Magnus comes in. For him, clarification on the board is almost always welcome. And he doesn't concern himself with thoughts like, how am I going to win this? It's his equal. Now, that comes later. He just keeps playing the right moves, and surprisingly, it's the right attitude. Alright, so Anand took. Really, for no reason at all. Now the pawn structure equalized, became symmetrical. White no longer has any advantage in space, and basically Black's comfortable. This Anand covers the f4 square because he wants comfort for his queen on e2. Understandable. They do all this, no knight g5. And now, well, what's gonna happen here? A trade on d8? Well, perhaps. Well, first off, Magnus is not concerned with that. Now, if everything's traded on the d file, he would still continue pressing on. Maybe he thinks that the fact that both e4 and a4 pawn are on the color of squares of the Romanian bishop, maybe he has already some symbolic advantage. Maybe Anand realized that. Maybe Anand thought, oh no, well that would be right up my opponent's alley, he's gonna press for a long time. I need to show some activity. And he played this move, which turned out to be unfortunate because of the weakening of the d4 square. Here comes this talk about positional mastery of Magnus Carlsen. The ability to recognize positional factors and judge them in matter of importance, and also be brutally honest in your reality check, is the real mastery of a positional player. So they somehow are able to find a particular sequence of moves, which often is very tactical, that proves that their positional pluses are more important than their minuses, or the positional pluses of the opponent. For example, here, knight f8. You can only play this move. The move looks strange, right? You move the knight back, and you saddle your queen with the task of protecting the pawn on e5. And where are you going with the knight? It's entirely possible, but this being a blitz game, Anand thought, oh, he's bringing the knight to d7 to cover the b6 square. And he went forward to force this capture and keeping his eye on the b6 square. No, we can question how valid this plan is, just simply because what's b6 square? But okay, well, as I said, like in blitz game, it's important to do something, and then sometimes you just simply cannot look that far ahead in terms of like what I'm gonna do next. Now came this move. Now we begin to understand something, that the black knight is actually coming to e6, with the destination being the d4 square. I'm thinking that in this position, if queen e3, let's just suppose that black takes, and then he plays this move. The queen still protects on e5. On the next move, the black knight is going to come to d4. Usually I'm a little cautious not to engage in this talk about bad bishops because, I know, of course, bad bishops protect good pawns and all that, and not every bishop that sits behind the e4 pawn is a bad bishop. Look how much pain White is willing to go through in order to keep his Spanish bishop on c2, even if the pawn sits on e4 for a very long time. But here there's a different story. We have a square on d4 that black invades, and it's in White's territory. And the bishop itself on c2 becomes rather a liability. It constantly falls under attack everywhere, c2 or b3. And it probably shouldn't go to d3 because it would overload the d file. So White's uncomfortable. Anand wakes up to reality, employs this couple of moves, and brings his rook over to b1. And now in reply to move knight e6, he bravely goes for the capture. It's practically the only way to play this position. Otherwise, black just grabs the d4 square and e5 is going to be safely protected. And now, this is like typical Magnus. Probably a lot of people would want to avoid this and maybe try to keep the queen on c7. It seems like it's just simplification that allows the opponent to equalize. Because of the move queen d3. Magnus shrugs his shoulders and simply gets his pawn back. Now, it is really, truly amazing to me how difficult this position proved to be to play for white. And why? What's there, like 3 pawns each on the king side, two pawns each on the queen side. You can make a case that white's pawns are more active. Pawn to a5, knight to c5, attacking b7. But somehow it's just not about this. I was thinking, what factors here speak in black's favor, and I can only think of two. Factor number one. The white king is unsafe. You say, what? In the endgame, against just 3 pieces? There isn't even back rank. No, but it's the light square, and it's always a combination of some checks and some tricks, Obviously, if you protect a knight like this, then you lose right away. Check and fork. It may seem an accident to you, but those positional factors, particularly not very obvious ones, indeed, they only become visible after you look at 1 or 2 tactical lines. Some people would say, well, tactics works for black because black is better. Or black is better because the tactics work for him. But to me, it's like the chicken and egg dilemma. It's not, what important is what it is. And it doesn't matter, like what we put in first. A positional understanding or a tactical mastery or the other way around. I was always very ambiguous about this, but what I'm really interested in is how white gonna play this position. Now, rook b3 seems the best move. Now, white retains the option of taking on e4, but he realizes all the same, but that would be a big-time concession, because the rook from e4 will totally restrict the knight, and then there will be threats simply to capture and then win the pawn. So white doesn't want to do this. And now retreat. Now, what about those retreats, right? How do you explain the retreat? I guess Magnus figured that he needed to open the e-file for his rook, and they also may transfer the knight to d5, hitting the target on b4. Now, there is another difficulty here. Well, it seems like easy to recognize pawn targets, but if the pawn is not nailed down to place, it can move. But if you play b5 here, there would be problems. Takes. And suddenly bishop h3. That's what I meant when I talked about unsafe position of the white king. Now we look at this situation. It's just a knight that stops the mate. Nobody wants to play this, clearly. Aside of some other possibilities, such as rook c8, aiming to come to c1, which may be very strong, by the way. Even this could be quite unpleasant. But I think rook c8 would be played. So the activity of the rook. I looked at a different move here. I thought that white absolutely has to, in this situation, bring the bishop to f1. But it takes a lot of defensive moves that are difficult to play, difficult to agree that you must play this way. And allow bishop g4 and hang in there like that. One advantage in this for white, that he manages to keep the f6 knight out of play. With knight d5. No, Anand didn't play it. He played king g2. Now, amazing, bishop back to e6. Spots another problem. What is this? Is this positional chess? But is it based on some outstanding factors like the open file or passed pawn or bishop pair or weak pawns structure? No. Positional play based on tactical motifs. Now it's going to be the pin. There was no convenient way, as far as I can tell, for white to move the rook away and to be able to trade the bishop once it comes to d5. This happened, and now what? Who wants to play this move? It's disgusting, right? Bishop to e4, now the rook is out of play. And that rook can come from the d file. The pin looks bad. Bishop plays king f1. Seemingly he's okay, right? He's covering the e file. And now knight g4. For some people this may seem accidental, right? Somehow black is able to create tactical threats and he's actually winning material here, a pawn. But I don't know, I can't just write it off as an accident. I think there was some really deep positional understanding on Magnus's part. Now h3. I don't know what else to do. I was thinking of this move, but okay, probably a better choice. If you are going to be down a pawn, you gotta go to the rook endgame. Here there are chances, of course, much more than in a position with the bishop still remaining. If white manages to trade all the pawns on the queen side, he makes a draw. Would he be able to do this against Magnus Carlsen? I am not so sure. He played h3, and now because of that fork on h2, the only move is to take, and then you down a pawn. It's a bad situation with the bishops on the board. Plays this to secure the king again, king f8. Rook there, grabs the d file. Quickly Anand played this, he was in time trouble, which is of course in blitz game comes much quicker, and then reality check. Rook c8. That's what it is. Obviously in the rook and same cover bishop endgames, an extra pawn often is converted by going to the same cover bishop. Now the only way white could be okay if he somehow managed to bring the king all the way, but he can't. Vishy kind of panicked here and played a horrible move f4. He probably had to, for sure, he had to go king f3, at least to get his king to d4. Because the kings, they go there. Now black would probably fix the pawn on the light square, and then all he needs to do is just to create a passed pawn over there, and that would force the white king away from the center. Then he grabs b5, first plays this. I mean, it's a winning endgame. But f4, king e7, resignation. No, when the king comes to c5, you will lose this pawn. To me, it's amazing. Okay, they played 26 moves, but from this point on, but such a powerful positional display in a seemingly equal position. Next game. Okay, we're gonna run this down. Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. Same birth year as Magnus Carlsen. Maxim had made huge strides lately. He raised his rating significantly, and now I believe he's sitting on number 4 position in the world. Finally stream. I was streaming already for 28 minutes. Yeah, g3 and b4, bad combination, but how do you see the knight coming to d4? You have to play knight f8. Anyway, to Maxim. Well, he played well in Paris. And while he didn't manage to keep pace with Nakamura, nobody could. He was kinda in contention, he was hanging in there. Seemingly, it seemed to me that, okay, there was Hikaru, there was Magnus, and was Wesley So and Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. So they looked like 4 best players there. Well, the others, they were having their moments, but all in all, they didn't seem like they could compete for top positions. And I expected a lot from MVL in the Belgium stage, right? Because he's young and apparently in good health and all that, but I don't know what happened to him. His play was not impressive at all in Leuven. he seemed kind of flat and he was struggling to get his kind of positions. There were a few games, obviously, since they played 27 games, where things went well for the Frenchman, but all in all, he underperformed, and I was joking that maybe being separated from his home country in France and having to travel into faraway exotic place of Belgium, probably about an hour and a half by car, or maybe a couple hours train ride. Yes, he couldn't adjust, but okay, anyway. It may be that Maxim, who's a great blitz and rapid player, recently been concentrated on classical chess. No, it's always either this or that, maybe he overdid a little bit. So somehow that freshness that always was trademark of his play was not present in this game, but of course when you play Magnus. Okay, Nimzo. You see, that's typical Magnus. And by the way, not everything he plays in the opening is garbage. Magnus actually, has his own taste and preference in opening play. And number one priority for him is to avoid forced lines, particularly ones that give the opponent I think they take on d5, yeah. Particularly ones that give the opponent direct attacking chances, such as this line that's currently all rage. For sure, MVL was up to playing this. Thinking of the Greek gift followed by typical knight g5 and so on. This is not a joke. There were some games by very good players where white succeeded in all this. But d6 is not total garbage, Like we look at this, Magnus didn't go for main line. Is that a sign of weakness? I don't think so. I don't think that Magnus, even if he has any weaknesses, I don't think he allows them to take over. I think he always plays with a quiet confidence of a champion. And this has been played. Okay, it's originated with Badur Jabava, and then we'll smile and say, that's Jabava. But Jabava plays b3 on move 1. But some other pretty decent players went for this. Now, it would be ridiculous to play like that if it wasn't for one little thing, the position of the white knight. You move that knight to c3, nobody, no Magnus Carlsen, not even Jabava, would want to play this position. But the knight not influencing the center and blocking the bishop, pardon me, makes it possible. Okay, c5, fine. Now we get to all this. Now, what is this, guys? Is that King's Indian? Huh? Is that the King's Indian? Now, don't look at the structure. Somehow we almost always identify opening by the pawn structure. But that's where the pieces are, right? Often. It's actually old Benoni kind of thing. d4, c5, d5, e5. Once again, white put that knight on d2. All right. Now, before you say, all right, I'm a positional player and I suggest knight b1, I give you points for that. Indeed. Strong players, I think is such as Tomaszewski, actually played knight b1 and then to c3 in this line. Nothing wrong with that. You can do this. Fine. Well, you can say, yeah, I wasted a couple of moves, but he went back and forth with the bishop and he took 2 moves on the e-pawn. And besides, in this kind of position, how important is just one extra tempo? You'll be surprised. It might be important. Now, blocking this situation, since it's not the King's Indian, nonetheless plays g6. Okay, let me throw a few moves in. Or maybe start with knight. Oh, no, it has to go knight h5. Then the knight goes to g7 in support of f5. That's a plan. d4, c5 on move 1 It could easily transpose, Jacob. d4, c5, d5, and e5. And then we can easily transpose to this position, can we not? Check b9. Okay, that's terminology, maybe. Okay, let's not split hairs over this. So anyway, this is the plan, right? That's what they play. And on the queen side, black just stands firm, without making any sudden movements. Alright, so what does a positional player do? Necessarily looks to improve one piece. Knight b1, knight c3. Not necessarily so. In my understanding, a truly strong positional player knows how to use the pieces where they already are. Sort of works, with the hand that was dealt to him. Like in this case, knight on d2. Perhaps we should relocate this knight to g3. In support of this, I will mention there are positions like this from Roy Lopez, from the old Breyer line, right? Knight b8, knight d7. If you put your knight on g3, you actually may stop black's only play with f5. So plan... hang on a second. Yeah, rook e1, g6, knight f1. Knight h5. Okay, I'll throw the bishop there. You go over there. Knight g3. Knight f6. There. You know what? Yeah, either this. Okay, yeah, that's possible. So I can play like this. May not be easy to play f5. I can even put the queen on c2. Some more ambitious play would even be to play this way. Wow. You really want to put the number on the opponent, right? If you stop f5, this is not going anywhere. We can get to this later. Since Maxim is no e4 player, I don't think this should be any kind of revelation to him. Somehow I think this being a blitz game, he simply didn't have time to reflect on the situation. He clearly didn't expect this opening, and he just tried to treat it like a King's Indian. Now, another trademark of Magnus Carlsen is a positional player. His positional mastery is even more visible in rapid games and blitz. Amazingly so. Because he just reacts to things much quicker than other guys. Given time, just like with tactics, a lot of strong players can figure out positional subtleties. But to do it quickly when everything changes in a 5-minute game. a5. Instantly, great decision. So he's fighting for the c5 square. That's what he wants to do. Bunch of exchanges and the knight to c5. So logically, white takes over there, and then knight b3. Maybe he thought knight b3 was logical. To me, it's a bad move. You still had to send the knight the same direction. Rook e1, knight f1, and so on. And now, maybe the knight on b3 kinda out of play, but what about the black rook? Interestingly enough, well, of course the rook is stronger than the knight, but in a situation in close positions like this, when the action takes place on the area of the board, that rook would not be able to reach anyway. In fact, this trade-off, it's a temporary trade-off, both pieces can get back, possibly works in black's favor. And now I watch this. Unfolds. Knight e1. All King's Indian, right? So no f5 because the knight on h5. And it goes back. Amazing, how he took his time with f5. You play f5, maybe he will take. Now there is a possibility of f4. Knight f6, that was so nice. And now he moves the bishop over there. And now Maxim devises what he did, you know, he simply moved the bishop out. Now Maxim devises this unfortunate plan with the trade of the light square bishop. Once again, probably if he had time, he would realize that, why am I doing this? I'm actually making my e4 pawn weak. And I shouldn't be doing this. I should be thinking of ways of dealing with this bishop somehow in a different way, which wouldn't be easy to do. There comes this. Well, in the King's Indian, obviously, black often is having a hard time activating bishop from g7. It came out much easier now from g5. And what's the point of this? No, well, it's in support of f4. Quite possible. So Maxim takes. And now suddenly, bishop traded for a knight. As they say, you always have to have a good justification to give up your bishop for a knight. What is the justification? Well, it's in speeding up your play and bringing the knight to d4. Tempo. You know, in these positional battles, Magnus senses it instantly. You sometimes need just one move, just one tempo, to impose your will on the opponent and prove that your evaluation of the position was correct. And here he hits the bishop, and it's awkward to defend it. Obviously, somehow, someway, the move a5 was never played. If white had this move in, then maybe he can just say, okay, I have this knight over there, but I'm keeping the rook there, and I'll play this, and then my next move is f4. But he doesn't want to move any other of his pieces, the queen or the f2 rook, to protect the bishop. So he goes back and comes knight d4. That's why I took with the knight. Fischer used similar idea. Trade. And now the c5 square opens for the other knight. Everything just works perfect. MVL tried this. Now he's ready to capture on c5. After that, okay, there is a pawn on d4, but there is a pawn on d5. e5 is backward. Anyone's game. He's not gonna get it. Amazingly, his bishop, that is not restricted by central pawns, is truly a bad bishop. It hardly has any purpose except at hoping to be exchanged for the knight on d6. It hits a target on d6, which is well protected by the black rook from a6. And most important, it's loose itself. It's a major liability. What to do? You don't want to play rook b2 and open up for things like e4, right? Maxim plays... No, he did play rook b2. He didn't want to play queen b1, I guess. What would happen here? Maybe the same move, e4. That could be pretty dangerous. Ah, white is so awkward here. It's actually a pretty good move. So he played rook b2. Check. Queen d4. Domination. Now, dominating the center is, no, allow me this, it's a centerpiece of positional play, right? When your pieces are like that, then exert your influence on both ends of the board, both flanks, and you're simply in control of the game. Since times of Botvinnik particularly stressed out centralization as very important positional plan, part of your strategy. Tremendously awkward there, with the rooks. And I mean, you look at that queen, it takes just one move. You put your rook there and then you take, but now c4 is under attack. Plays rook b3. He's trying. There comes e4. Of course, they have file. Oh man, takes the pawn. No, if this is not a picture of domination, then I don't know what is. Bishop d2 on what move? After queen b6. Let me go back. No, you just came bishop b4, right? I mean, how do you bring yourself play like this? You just had the bishop on d2, you went there, moves the queen out, and then you go back. Maybe when the situation is that bad. Now I assume knight c5. Further improving and preparing some attack here. Rook b1. Rook b1 and a5, right? No, there is something to it, but no, nonetheless, I believe that black has serious advantage here. Maybe bishop b4 was entirely a bad idea. Who can tell? Anyway, so we return to the game, and this is your domination. Magnus even allowed himself a little joke by playing rook b6 to stop any hope of counterplay. But he wouldn't be much anyway, g7 protected. But and after this, e2, brilliant game. For MVL, I think he made huge strides, obviously, in chess. I noticed in these two tournaments, since I did some extensive work on both events, and probably saw nearly every game played in those events. I think when time control is shorter and rapid, and particularly blitz, sometimes MVL simply walks into a kind of position he doesn't know very well and doesn't play very well. It's growing pains. He wants to become an all-around player like Magnus. No, because he knows that's the only way to beat Magnus. He can't count only on certain kinds of positions. But it's a learning process, and perhaps it wasn't the wisest approach for this particular event. But we can't really criticize MVL, because I'm sure this event, however important it was, it's not the pinnacle of his career. So let's reserve our judgment. In the meantime, next, Kramnik. Okay. Kramnik wants his Berlin. Magnus decided not to play d3, just wanted to have some variety. Plays this line, which MVL also played successfully with white. White almost has nothing here, right? But black needs to play a few moves to reposition his pieces, and seemingly he does. Look at this. Nice exchange over there. White plays this. And Kramnik, okay, we'll trade more. Oops. From the very beginning, even 10 moves ago, you could tell that the only standout positional factor there was the open e-file. Everything else, pawns asymmetrical, unblemished pawn structures, and it's the e-file. And somehow white won the battle for the e-file. How important is it? You will see. Bishop h6. From now on, black is going to be under the threat of queen e8 at all times. Well, white doesn't have an immediate threat. I understand perfectly well why Kramnik wanted to trade. Magnus, he doesn't mind trades. He plays for the rook endgame. Now, this is what they call the absolute seventh, right? You play rook b8, whatever, g3, doesn't matter what move white plays. g3, g4, king f1. Point is, you can't travel with your king to trap that rook, because it will take f7. And moving the f7 pawn away from the attack, such as this, only extends the 7th. That's what Nimzovich called the absolute 7th. Okay, Kramnik does the right thing. Now, if white is not going to be able to force black to take on e7, how to improve your position? And Magnus devises a plan which I think was inspired by the famous game of 20 years ago, so Nigel Short's win over Jan Timman. The game that featured the incredible king march. Now, clearly, black doesn't want f6 because it's check. Now, you either give up the pawn and give white the 7th. So it's king g8, and there it comes. Now, these moves show that Kramnik probably just didn't know what to do, right? Or maybe he thought his position was invincible. But I think after this move, he realized what's coming. Well, there is another thing that white can do. So suppose black plays b5 and then this and then maybe something like that. There is also g4. Somehow the dominating position of the queen on e5 makes f4 quite a safe place for the white king. And it's also useful to bring the queen up because when black finally caves in and offers a queen trade, as it happened in the game, the white king is right there we need it. Actually, I'm looking at this whole thing. Queen d6 was played. Magnus's evaluation of the position was spot on. He recognized one positional factor there and set up this seemingly innocuous, series of moves, trades, and probably made Kramnik think, okay, well, he's happy now with his tournament situation, and he doesn't mind the draw. All right. Funny thing is that something happened to Magnus Carlsen. He actually didn't win this endgame. I mean, look how desperate Kramnik became. What is this? She doesn't do anything. Oh, come on, Magnus. Can you do this? Can't you do this? King where? This way. You can go king f6, followed by rook g7 and take that one. The f-pawn will decide the game. This, by the way, is a mating threat. What are we talking about here, people? Black has to resign. I don't know, really, but I think, there was just... He was already winning the tournament comfortably and just kind of let up. You can see the rest of the game. And amazingly, it ended up on a draw. Magnus was probably winning for a long time, but okay, we'll leave the endgame things aside. Well, maybe somewhat disappointing not to be able to win such a position, but Magnus, the very next round. Once again, I'm showing you the stretch of 4 games in a row. Just absolutely, totally dispatches of the man who, in the eyes of many, myself included, is viewed as his #1 adversary. My apologies to Sergei Karyakin, but in the past 3 or 4 years, Fabiano Caruana won the most games against Magnus Carlsen, by far many more than any player on the circuit. And while he lost his share, the overall advantage of Magnus is probably maybe a couple of wins, something like 7-5. And this is how it goes. And even in these tournaments, Fabiano did score some wins over Magnus. I think he beat him at least twice in the 6 times they met. So it's always a principal battle between these two. Well, Fabiano plays this, and I wouldn't say that this is a bad idea. He wants to have a long game and wants to avoid theory, and It's fine. Another question, once again, is practicality. Fabiano plays every game like that's a game of his life. So he tries very hard. He spends the most time, analyzes probably the most variations, and trusts his intuition the least. And it's very taxing. He does get tired, and besides, he's in time trouble. So he goes for this plan, trying to prevent e5. He wanted the black knight to come out to d7, and now he plays this positional idea, because if it takes with the pawn, now the knight is no longer covering the c file, and white can go whatever, knight e5 or knight c3, anything he does, he is already happy because the knight on d7. Yeah, I will comment on the Grand Chess Tour format. Yeah, when I have a chance, Well, we'll go on for a little bit longer than 1 hour. Don't worry. I want to bring your attention to this move, knight takes d5. I mean, that shows the great flexibility of Magnus's thinking. Just today, a grandmaster I was working with told me, well, you know what? People say that Magnus's openings are bad. Okay, maybe that's what Kasparov said or whatever, but come to think of that, there may not be very deep, because he doesn't like long variations. Deep, but the deep, in this case, that's just what it means, the length of moves. It doesn't have anything to do with profoundness or whatever. In fact, Magnus plays great variety of openings, and he did this from his very young age. It's very natural for him to play all sorts of positions, and he has what some people refer to as great chess culture, meaning that he knows all the classical examples, and he can pretty much play any structure. Some of them he likes more than others, but that's a matter of choice. Fabi changed coaches. Yes, he has. Okay, let's take a break from this and indeed answer these two questions. First of all, about the Grand Chess Tour. Now, they had this complicated system of... What I didn't like about this was this. Suppose there is a tie in a tournament, right? So they have this thing. You get 13 Grand Chess Tour points for first place and 10 for second, and I think 7 for third. And then you have a tie, second and third, for example. I mean, doesn't matter, or even first through third, whatever it is. Okay, fine. You wanna figure out like the money, right, in the tournament, because there's separate prize money. Fine, have your blitz, have your tie breaks. You don't use any tie breaks to split the Grand Chess Tour points. You just simply have to use a fraction, whatever it is. Okay, add it all up, it's not so difficult to do. So you have 13, 7, and 10, it's 20. And give these guys, like... What am I talking about? I can't count, What did I just say? It's 30. And give every opponent 10 points. It's only logical. I mean, in fact, what happened, indeed, Giri scored more points in those tournaments combined. Giri didn't lose a single game. And then somehow, because of this, they had them playing a tiebreak, right? And Carlsen was excluded. There were 3 of them. So first MVL had to play Giri, because Magnus had better whatever, like number of wins or whatnot. I don't know what it was. Because you can't have these 3 guys playing each other at all times. All tournaments that involve 3 or playoff, whatever, tie-break tournaments that involve 3 players are very strange. Because the only way is to have them all play each other, right? Why give preference to one guy? It was really very weird. 3 is a perfect pair, right? I don't know. If you get the reference, 3 is a perfect pair. If you get the reference, that means that you're my kind of guy, that number 1, and number 2, you're quite old. I don't think anybody here would get 3 as a perfect pair reference. Yeah, with Chuchev, they worked a lot. Experienced coach, maybe. Yeah, there were some blunders. No, anyway, you throw the whole thing. People played for whole year, and then it all thrown into this sort of game of chance, kind of one blitz game. There is something wrong about it. You do it when there is no other choice, but to kind of promote it, I think it's totally wrong. I remember I was furious, and when some of old U.S. championships, they said, okay, if there is a tie for first place, we're going to play a blitz tiebreak. A blitz tiebreak? We just played this thing for 13 days, What is this? And money also. No, you sit there. Okay, I know title. Everybody wants titles. But, I mean, literally, that after working for 13 days, then you throw away, like 10 grand or whatever in one blunder in a blitz game. It sickens you. Anyway, about Fabiano, yeah, and the coaches. No, so he's no longer working with Chuchev. Now he's got himself Kasimdzhanov. Now, Kasimdzhanov is a great theoretician and arguably the most booked up guy. Now, gone are the days of the reckless Kasimdzhanov going to Libya and beating everybody in tie breaks. He still was pretty decent rapid player, but as a tournament player, Kasimdzhanov became shadow of himself. He plays like he's 70 years old. All theory and then long things and offering a draw on move 17. He's playing strength, but okay, but as a coach, obviously he possesses something that other people don't. I can sit there and say that I'm a good coach, but I don't have 100th of what Kasimdzhanov has in the opening. So basically, I don't know, hiring me is just like maybe if you want company or, I don't know, drinking partner or somebody play a game of snooker with or whatever, but as far as opening preparation, useless. But Kasimdzhanov, okay, remains to be seen. He also got himself a pretty outgoing and funny guy in Lawrence Trent to be his manager and a spokesman, and I think it's a good find. And Trent is not a bad player himself. He actually played in recently an online blitz qualifier, and at some moment he was even in the first place. Well, we're in a company of 50 or 70 grandmasters. Yeah, the candidates not having tiebreak. That there is something going on there. So it seems like the organizers there sitting there, instead of doing the right thing, they say, okay, we're just gonna do a complete opposite of what our competitors do. So we hate FIDE, therefore we're gonna have all these tie breaks today and rapid blitz, whatnot. Blitz, decide everything. Because that's exactly what FIDE never does. To me, criticizing FIDE is like beating on a dead horse. How many points you can score, if you say, Kirsan is Eastern despot and he had Larissa Yudina, the journalist, killed and he's corrupt and he's buddy up with Saddam and Gaddafi and all of them. We've heard this all before. It's not like it's not true, but I mean, okay, everybody knows it. I will be the last person, to defend FIDE. And I do have an idea that Magnus, once he takes care of Karyakin, if he does, could possibly take some drastic revolutionary steps in breaking up FIDE's stronghold on the World Championship thing. And before you say, oh, Kasparov tried to do it and look where it got him, I tell you, well, it didn't get him in bad place. He lives in Manhattan. And he's this cool guy, rides his bike, wears a bright bicycle helmet, and all in all, plays good blitz, as we all saw. Not a bad idea, but seriously speaking, yeah, what the heck, bunch of corrupt people with very checkered reputation. It's almost like every guy in FIDE is by definition a guy who has history of wheeling and dealing and buying and selling, or whatever. And these guys, they always rise in the top on the FIDE structure. No, so I will have no regrets, when the top players, they simply ignore this federation. And their Olympiad is Okay. Anyway, rant. King Crimson. Man! You're the man. You're the man, Jason. Jason, check. You're my kind of guy, yeah. Amazing tune, this seemingly, this three-tone disharmony, but it catches you and, I don't know, gets to you on some level. They used to call this kind of music, it's not rhythm, it's meter. This kind of music rhythm is meter, I meant to say, as devil's music in the Middle Ages. It's indeed, there's something weird in it. 3 is a perfect pair. Alright, so coming back to this game. So Magnus plays this and bishop d2, and then he gets to some kind of English, I guess. Now, it can easily be criticized. I know people criticized it. They analyzed and they found better moves, but I mean, in Blitz it's important to see an idea. If you see it quickly, then chances are that the opponent will fall for it. Now, in this position, seemingly White has achieved his goal. And indeed, Caruana quickly played knight f6. You get that bishop, right? How can this be bad? You get his fianchetted bishop. That's exactly what Magnus counted on. Practically much stronger was this, to go for the other bishop. Or else, maybe even queen c2. Look what a trap Magnus caught him in. Trade on b3. And bishop g4. Always based on tactics. The pawn on a5. It's not good to take it. If you do this, hits this, no chance to take on b6. Now, of course, there's this. Hits the bishop and then eliminates the key pawn. Look at this. Mash unit. Yeah. So Fabiana couldn't go for this. We'll return to the discussion in a moment. Knight takes c5. Takes here. Knight d5. Hits this bishop that must stay there protecting the knight. You go to this. You have the same collection of invalids. The bad position. So rook e1. And now, star move. Again he gives up the bishop for knight. Now it's the bishop pair. Look at that bishop. Trapped. Caruana wants to liberate the bishop. He would be better off playing g4. Trying to get back this way. He's worse, by the way. This knight will quickly come to d4. This knight can also come to b4. Knights got squares. But this didn't help. Oh man, it didn't help at all. The right knight, and now to b5. Once again f6, and then he grabs the pawn. And the bishop is still in danger. You do this, and then you're gonna lose this bishop. Fabiana played bishop f4 right away. Now comes f5. So we thought this bishop was bad, right? It was always in danger. As it turns out, Magnus trades for it. A great flexibility there. And now the h3 bishop is very bad, and its extra pawn and b3 is falling. And he finished the game very easily. It's just tremendous, Just I'm looking at this whole thing. Even this position, it looked unclear. If anything, maybe white is better. Somehow he's... okay, yeah, so let me go back to all this. His ability to foresee those positional transformations and go bishop takes and then h6. And that's all in a blitz game. Guys, I just showed you 4 blitz games in a row. Yeah, somewhat biased selection. maybe indeed it was the best stretch that Magnus played in these two tournaments, Rapid and Blitz. But if you're not impressed, no, well, I don't know. Okay, to the talk. Now let's do another 10 minutes of talk. Miklab. Magnus doesn't much like FIDE either. I think who knows next PCA, Professional Chess Association, branch out of Garry Kasparov and some Intel guys, and there was a New York lawyer, Rice. Was it Bob Rice? Doesn't matter. Remember this fellow. People seem to like Magnus better than Garry for good reason. No, obviously. Magnus, first of all, Magnus is a 21st century guy, right? So it doesn't come out with this baggage, No, old people, they always have baggage. Particularly the ones that change countries and come from different political systems, and they think that their struggle, which was no more than a personal struggle to better your life, somehow becomes the centerpiece of the world because he was struggling and fighting against the oppressive, inhumane, system of government or societal order. Now, there comes Viktor Korchnoi, and I will stop right there because I don't want to say bad things about him. And next is Garry Kasparov. Now, I can easily relate to this because I have been through the same thing in my life as those guys did. Now, was I ever tempted to score some points, because of this? Yes, I admit I have, but no, well, I haven't done it yet. Now, when people tell me, oh, if you were offered $1 million for that, you would be sitting there and bashing, your old country, Mother Russia, day and night. It's only a matter of money they pay you. Now, the fallacy of this argument is as follows. They say you would have, but they already did. You get it? That's about nobody offering me enough money to do what they did. Now, I absolutely understand, that what Kasparov is doing now with his political career or whatever is left of it is basically continuation of what he thought, was his ticket in life, but before that he was getting paid for it. Somebody maintained his offices in Moscow and supported, his political activism over there. I don't know what changed. Maybe the administration in the White House. Apparently now he's back in chess. Okay, whatever democracy lost, chess gained. I welcome this. But as far as Garry Kasparov becoming FIDE president, you know how it was. He showed absolute contempt, for unimportant people and unimportant countries, looking down at them and only hanging out with the important guys, which is basically a handful of Western European representatives, chess federations. You don't win elections in the world governing body by doing like this. So clearly. Now, Magnus, in this respect, absolutely has no baggage in that. And Magnus, while he's obviously not looking any political, looking to win a political office anywhere, nonetheless, when Magnus says, let's do this, people will follow. Yeah, speaking of Tigran Petrosian, well, yeah, I know, 21-4. Now, I probably would not tell you anything new that Petrosian actually should not have even played that much. He used outside assistance during the qualifier, and if I were in charge of this, Petrosian would be immediately, his results will be struck out of this, and the spot would go to the next guy. Now, I mean, I'm not telling people what they need to do, and besides, if I were in charge, it's probably a pretty scary supposition. Alright, so this is where we're at, I do believe that Magnus might take some steps. He doesn't like sitting there waiting for the next challenger or whatever. He didn't mind playing this, but the fact that he didn't want to come and play in St. Louis probably goes to show that he's not that eager to play the same crowd again and again. He was very excited during World Cup. He made comments on Twitter saying, "I love this tournament. I would love to play over there if it was little better." By little better, I mean the money should be 10 times, obviously, when it's like this, because literally, to play a tournament like this and win 90 grand, for the winner, it's really not enough. Magnus obviously would be interested to play in knockouts only if the prize was up to his standards. Was it proven that he cheated? I said he used outside assistance. I didn't say computer. They're outside assistance. That's what it is. No, of course, we're not going to get into subjects here, but the fact of the matter is that, last thing I will say that if he wanted to play Magnus Carlsen, he got it, and he got what he deserved out of this. Well, online tournaments, okay, look, when it comes to, there is a known system of what they call proctors, right? You have a guy just being physically present there. Okay, there are enough people with integrity and good name in chess to basically almost in every corner of the world. And it's not very difficult to find. You ask this guy to show up and sit there for a few hours watching the guy play, and that's basically it. Well, so I would not say that online tournaments wouldn't work. I mean, we're talking about one bad apple, spoiling the whole barrel, or whatever. But some people, put it this way, some people, I saw it a lot over the board tournaments. They really don't think it's such a big deal if they talk during the game. Now, as much as it's said by the organizers, okay, no talking during the game, so, they have a tendency, as soon as they leave the board and go wherever, it all starts with hello, how you doing, and then switch into the native language, and then you stand there and you have no idea what they're talking about. Most likely talking about the game. And now with electronic things, we already had a guy who basically was on the social network sites talking about his own game, not maybe using computers or whatever, We had a guy like this. Now, to me, it's basically, okay, well, it's the way to release this tension, huge tension during the chess game. I know that. I played a lot of tournament games, but it's against the rules. And even if that's innocent and there is nothing there and we're talking about the weather, your opponent is not sure. Nobody's happy, to see over your shoulder the guy you're playing is who just got off the board and is talking to his fellow grandmaster. It's unnerving. And there's no place for this in chess tournaments. Proctoring is costly. Well, I mean, this stuff is going on in open tournaments, for crying out loud, So it's not like, it's online only. You see what's going on there? People talk all the time. You see the paranoia at children events? That's why they have to seal off, the entire area of some big hotel, all these ballrooms, and never let a single parent over there. Once, in California, there was one big kiddie event, in Sacramento, and I was there with a friend of mine. Okay, fine. So, his son played there, but his son was not about 300 rating points higher than the next guy in this tournament. The son is a grandmaster now. Doesn't matter. Okay, so we went for a drink somewhere outside of the hotel, and coming back we were talking. Well, we were just coming from the back side of the hotel, and there was another door over there. There are many doors in these hotels, right? And we pushed it and it was open, and we ended up in the restricted area over there. And then some guy spotted us, and I'm former US champion, whatever, some people over there knew me, but they called the hotel security on us. We almost ended up in the in jail. I mean, this is how seriously you have to take this stuff. No, outside assistance during the chess game is not only computers. Yeah. All right, guys. So basically, that's the time for today. Now, congratulate Magnus Carlsen on his dominating performance. So once again, I go over there and I see him with 23 points. And the funny thing is, I started with that even if he doesn't play another event, I think he's going to get some money from this Grand Chess Tour. Somehow I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be 3 people to finish ahead of his 23 points. That's pretty tall order. It's going to be tightly contested. Obviously, things will change a little bit, particularly as far as Fabiano Caruana goes, but he has 9 and he drops the worst result. He has to do real well in the 2 remaining classical tournaments. Well, there's still something to play for. Okay, we'll be looking forward to Bilbao tournament, as I said. And, well, chess calendar is very rich. Great events. Stay tuned, and, well, stay on the Internet Chess Club. That's where we bring you best events. Thank you, guys. Bye.